Throughout its Iraq campaign, ISIS has been targeting Christians. That's why many have fled here to the safety and protection of northern Iraq. But many still fear the wrath of this jihadist group. We visited a frightened Christian community just about a mile away from the front lines of the ISIS army. We left the friendlier confines of Erbil, heading towards the historic area of Nineveh, now known as Mosul, home to some of Iraq's besieged Christians.
This is the end line. We cannot go anymore.
Our guide, Pastor Majid, brought us as far as the Kurdish army, called a Peshmerga, would let us go. This is about the end of the line if you don't want to run into ISIS. We've been told they control the mountains behind us right now, and a few kilometers down the road you'd run into an ISIS checkpoint. This is the town called Bartilla. It has about 25,000 Christians in it, but we couldn't find one that would talk to us on camera because they're afraid of retribution. The conditions here are abysmal. There's no water because ISIS has turned it off, and no electricity because the Maliki government has turned that off. They are protected by the Peshmerga, who have set up a perimeter around this town and a few other towns around here. Without that, they know that ISIS would come in and kill most of the people here. They're asking for prayer for Christians around the world, and one Christian leader told me, just like the Apostle Paul asked for prayer, they're asking for prayer that God will protect this town and this region. We talked to one of the house church leaders. On our way back to the Kurdish capital, Erbil, Pastor Majid relays what he said. He told us when ISIS captured Nineveh, they gave Christians 3 choices.
They are not allowed to open their churches, and even if they opened, they are going to burn the churches. And also the Christians been asked to pay the tax. If not, they can leave Nineveh, and if they didn't left and they didn't pay the tax, they should give their heads.
When you say give their heads, you're talking about being beheaded?
Yeah.
In the midst of this cauldron surrounding them, this church leader sent out a prayer SOS.
Raise up prayers for us. This is what we need. When man is praying, God is working. So it is important for the churches outside Iraq to raise up prayers and also to fast for the sake of the people of Iraq.
The stunning blitzkrieg by ISIS left thousands of broken lives in its wake. This is one of the many refugee camps set up in the region. This one is just a few days old, and literally within the region, hundreds of thousands of people have been displaced. This camp is about a 15-minute drive from the ISIS forces, and most of the people here are from the city of Nineveh. And many of the men and women, boys and girls, have seen the worst of the fighting.
I saw people without hats on the street, and people who have been killed in the streets. I saw this with my own eyes. When they got into Nineveh, they entered the houses and killed whole families. They don't care about the ages or the humanity. They only care about themselves.
That carnage drove these people away.
In the region, according to the government, they said there was 100,000 coming to Erbil and 500,000 IDPs across the country. Yeah. But now this is a really serious crisis and a challenge for the whole Iraq. So we, international organizations, are here to support everyone who are in needs in this crisis.
Camp life reduces life to basics. People need water. They clamor for ice. Kids cool off in the 100-degree heat. People fight boredom. Yet they did survive the butchery of ISIS. It's a key time for the region, and especially here for the Kurdish people. They face a historic crossroads and the very real possibility they could declare themselves an independent state. But like the rest of Iraq, they face an uncertain future. While the turmoil has increased, a prayer movement has grown.
In the last couple of weeks, there's been a rise of prayer meetings, even just here in the city. And I get messages and calls of this prayer is going to happen in this house. So it's been happening even in homes. So we're seeing people really start to see God's face for their country. And the prayers are intensified, filled with faith and passion and big prayers.
Each one of us has the role to ask God, as we ask in the Lord's Prayer, let your will be done in heaven as it's in heaven on earth. I just want to encourage our dear brothers and sisters around the world to continue pray for our country, in spite of all the demographic changes, the destructions, the wars and whatever happening, God has the final word.
These are the lands of the Bible, the land of Nineveh and the prophet Jonah. And many here also believe this land has a future prophetic promise. In Isaiah 19 it says, "Assyria is the work of my hands." Because of the turmoil and fighting, Iraqi Christians are sending out an urgent prayer request to Christians around the world to pray that peace will come to these lands. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Erbil in Kurdish, Iraq.